The fluorescent lights of Boston General Hospital cast a harsh glow over Dr. Eliza Mercer's office. Rain pattered against the window, blurring the city skyline beyond. She studied the medical file before her with practiced precision, her brow furrowing deeper with each page she turned. "Stage 4 pancreatic cancer," she muttered, running her finger along the diagnosis. "Poor response to initial treatment. Minimal tumor reduction." The prognosis was grim. Senator William Hayes had perhaps 6 months left if he was lucky. A knock interrupted her thoughts. Her assistant poked his head in. "Senator Hayes and his daughter are here, Dr. Mercer." Eliza nodded, closing the file. She smoothed her white coat and took a deep breath, preparing herself for the conversation no oncologist ever wanted to have. Senator Hayes entered first. Once an imposing figure in Washington politics, now gaunt and pale, his expensive suit hanging loosely on his frame. Behind him followed a young woman in her late 20s, her posture rigid with tension. This had to be Caroline Hayes, the senator's only daughter. "Senator Hayes, please take a seat." Eliza gestured to the chairs opposite her desk. "Ms. Hayes, thank you for coming." "Dr. Mercer," the senator acknowledged with a nod. His voice, still commanding despite his illness, carried the distinct Boston Brahmin accent of old money and prestigious universities. "I'd prefer we cut to the chase. The last doctor spent 20 minutes dancing around the subject." Eliza appreciated his directness. "Of course, Senator Hayes, the latest scans show that the cancer has continued to spread despite our aggressive treatment approach. The tumors have not responded as we'd hoped." Caroline's hand found her father's, gripping it tightly. "What are our options?" "We can try a different chemotherapy protocol," Eliza explained, maintaining eye contact with both of them. "But I want to be honest with you. At this stage, we're talking about extending time and managing symptoms, not curing the disease." The senator nodded stoically. "How much time?" 6 months, perhaps 8 with the new treatment." "I'm sorry." Caroline's eyes welled with tears, but she blinked them back. "There must be something else. Clinical trials, experimental treatments." "I've reviewed everything available," Eliza said gently. "Your father's case is particularly aggressive, and—" "What about Dr. Reeves's immunotherapy trial at MIT?" Caroline interrupted. "I've been researching. They're showing promising results." Eliza shook her head. "Senator Hayes doesn't qualify for that trial. His cancer is too advanced, and there are complications with his liver function." The senator squeezed his daughter's hand. "It's all right, Caroline. I've had a good run." "No." Caroline's voice was suddenly steel. "I won't accept this. There has to be a way." Eliza recognized the desperation in her eyes. She'd seen it countless times before. The denial, the bargaining, the frantic search for miracles. "Ms. Hayes, I understand this is difficult." "You don't understand anything," Caroline snapped. She stood abruptly, pacing the small office. "Do you know what's happening right now? While my father is dying, the man who could save him is sitting in a prison cell." Eliza exchanged a confused glance with the senator, who sighed heavily. "Caroline, please," he said. "Not this again." "Dad, Dr. Zhang's research could save your life." Caroline turned to Eliza. "Dr. Li Zhang developed a revolutionary cancer treatment using modified stem cells. His results were miraculous, but the FDA shut him down, and now he's in prison for continuing his research illegally." Eliza's professional demeanor remained intact, though internally she was processing this unexpected turn. "I'm familiar with Dr. Zhang's case. His methods were deemed unsafe, and he conducted human trials without approval. Because the system is broken," Caroline's voice rose. "His patients were terminal, volunteered for treatment, and many of them recovered, including Senator Morton's wife, who coincidentally was granted compassionate use before they arrested Zhang." Senator Hayes rubbed his temples. "Dr. Mercer, I apologize for my daughter's outburst. She's been fixated on this since my diagnosis." "Because it could save you," Caroline insisted. She turned to Eliza, her eyes burning with conviction. "Doctor, Zhang's treatment targets the genetic markers specific to my father's cancer. I've studied the research. It could work. Ms. Hayes, Eliza said carefully, even if Dr. Zhang's treatment showed promise, he's currently serving a 5-year sentence. His lab has been shut down, his research confiscated. Caroline's chin lifted. That's why I need your help. You're respected in the medical community. Your voice carries weight with the hospital board, with regulators. What exactly are you asking? Eliza's tone was cautious. Help me get my father access to Dr. Zhang's treatment. Help me get Zhang released to continue his work. The senator closed his eyes in embarrassment. Caroline, enough. Dr. Mercer isn't going to risk her career on some wild, let my father free, and I will cure you, Caroline declared, her gaze fixed on Eliza. That's what Zhang told the review board before they sentenced him. Everyone laughed. The room fell silent except for the steady rhythm of rain against the window. Eliza studied Caroline, the determined set of her jaw, the desperate hope in her eyes. Under normal circumstances, she would gently redirect such misplaced faith. But something about Caroline's conviction gave her pause. Your father isn't Dr. Zhang, Eliza pointed out quietly. No, Caroline agreed. But I'm his daughter. I've spent 2 years studying his research, corresponding with his former colleagues. I know how his treatment works. She reached into her bag, pulling out a thick folder. Here's everything: the research, the case studies, the modifications I've made to address the FDA's safety concerns. Eliza hesitated before accepting the folder. Ms. Hayes, I understand your desperation, but just look at it, Caroline pleaded. That's all I'm asking. Look at it as a scientist, not as my father's doctor, Senator Hayes sighed. Caroline has a PhD in biochemistry from Stanford. She's not just an emotional daughter grasping at straws. Still, this is asking too much of Dr. Mercer. Eliza nodded slowly. I'll review the research, Ms. Hayes, but I want to be clear. I can't promise anything, and I won't do anything unethical or illegal. That's all I ask, Caroline said, her shoulders relaxing slightly. Just an honest review. She reached into her bag again, extracting a business card. My contact information. I'm staying at the Liberty Hotel while I'm in Boston. Udi, as they prepared to leave, Senator Hayes turned to Eliza. Dr. Mercer, regardless of what comes of my daughter's alternative approach, I'd like to proceed with the treatment you recommended. Of course, Senator. We'll schedule your first session for next week. After they left, Eliza sat in silence for several minutes, the rain providing a gentle soundtrack to her thoughts. Her fingers traced the edge of Caroline's folder, professional caution battling with scientific curiosity. Finally, she opened it. The first page contained a handwritten note. Dr. Mercer, before you dismiss this as the desperate plea of a daughter unwilling to accept reality, remember that every medical breakthrough in history began with someone challenging the accepted wisdom. All I ask is that you read this with an open mind. My father has 6 months. What do we have to lose? Caroline Hayes. Eliza turned the page and began to read. 3 weeks later, Eliza stood in the dimly lit corner of the Hawthorne, an upscale cocktail bar near Kenmore Square. Outside, snow had begun to fall, coating Boston in a pristine white blanket that muffled the city sounds. She sipped her gin and tonic, eyes fixed on the door, wondering if she'd made a terrible mistake. Caroline's research had been impressive, meticulously documented, scientifically sound, with modifications that addressed many of the safety concerns raised by the FDA. After spending nights reviewing the material, Eliza had reached out to former colleagues who specialized in immunotherapy. Their cautious interest had only fueled her own. The door opened, bringing a gust of cold air and snowflakes. Caroline entered, unwinding a scarf from her neck and scanning the room. When she spotted Eliza, her face lit with hope. She made her way through the crowd, sliding into the seat opposite. You called, she said simply, her breath still visible from the cold outside. Eliza nodded. I reviewed your research. It's compelling. Caroline's eyes widened. You believe it could work? Theoretically, yes. But there are enormous practical obstacles, not least of which is that the creator of this treatment is currently in federal prison. MCI Cedar Junction, Caroline confirmed. Minimum security wing. I visit him monthly. Eliza leaned forward. Why are you really doing this, Caroline? Is it just for your father, or is there something more? Caroline was quiet for a moment, tracing a pattern in the condensation on the table. When I was 12, my mother died of breast cancer. My father was campaigning for his first Senate term. He barely made it to her funeral. She looked up, her eyes clear and determined. I promised myself I would never feel that helpless again. I got my PhD, focused on cancer research, dedicated my life to understanding this disease. And Dr. Zhang, I met him at a conference 3 years ago. His approach was revolutionary. Personalized treatment using the patient's own genetic markers to program stem cells to target specific cancer types. When the FDA shut him down, I reached out. We've been corresponding ever since. Eliza sipped her drink. You know that what you're proposing, getting a federal prisoner released to treat your father with an unapproved therapy, is virtually impossible. Not impossible, Caroline corrected. Difficult. There are precedents for compassionate use exemptions, even for treatments not yet approved. As for Zhang, with the right political pressure, your father's influence, Eliza realized. Caroline nodded. He served on the Judiciary Committee for 15 years. He has connections in the Justice Department, the FDA, everywhere that matters. Then why hasn't he pursued this himself? Because he doesn't believe in it, Caroline admitted. He trusts the system, even as it's failing him. That's why I need your help. If you, as his doctor, support this approach, he might listen. Eliza studied the younger woman. Even if, and this is an enormous if, we could get approval for compassionate use and secure Dr. Zhang's temporary release, there's no guarantee the treatment would work. I know, but the alternative is certain death. The bartender approached, and they paused their conversation to order another round. When he left, Eliza leaned closer. I spoke with Dr. Patel at Memorial Sloan Kettering. She reviewed the research and agrees there's merit to Zhang's approach, but she also emphasized the risks, cytokine storms, autoimmune reactions, potentially accelerating the cancer's spread. Caroline nodded grimly. I'm aware of the risks. So is my father. Is he? You said he doesn't believe in this treatment. He knows the risks of traditional treatment too, suffering through chemo only to die anyway. Caroline's voice cracked slightly. At least this way there's hope. Eliza sat back, feeling the weight of the decision before her. Her medical training urged caution, adherence to established protocols, but hadn't she entered medicine to save lives, if there was even a chance? What exactly do you need from me? She asked finally. Relief flooded Caroline's features, your professional opinion supporting compassionate use, your help navigating the hospital's ethics committee, and your expertise when we administer the treatment. You're assuming a lot of things will fall into place. They will, Caroline said with surprising confidence. My father made a call this morning. The U.S. Attorney's office is already reviewing Zhang's case for possible release into a research supervision program. Eliza nearly choked on her drink. You already got the senator on board? Then why do you need me? Because the compassionate use application requires his primary oncologist's support, Caroline explained. And because I trust you, I've researched your career, Dr. Mercer. You've pushed boundaries before. Your work in Ghana testing novel delivery systems for chemotherapy drugs, your advocacy for patients in clinical trials. You care more about saving lives than following rules. The observation was uncomfortably accurate. Throughout her career, Eliza had indeed prioritized patients over protocols when the situation demanded it. Still, this was different. The scale, the risks, the very public nature of the senator's case. If this goes wrong, Eliza said slowly, it won't just be your father's life at stake. It could end my career, damage the hospital's reputation, and set back legitimate stem cell research by years. And if it goes right, Caroline countered, it could change cancer treatment forever. My father could live, and thousands of others might follow. Snow continued to fall outside, transforming Boston into something magical and new. Eliza felt herself standing at a similar threshold. The possibility of transformation, of breakthrough, balanced against the very real risk of catastrophic failure. "I'll speak with the ethics committee," she decided finally. "I'll present the research and request compassionate use consideration. But Caroline, I need you to understand, I'm not promising miracle cures. I'm not even promising I'll support this all the way through. If at any point I believe this is causing harm..." "You'll stop," Caroline finished. "I understand." They finished their drinks in thoughtful silence. As they prepared to leave, Caroline reached into her bag and withdrew a small USB drive. "The complete data from Zhang's last 16 patients," she explained, sliding it across the table. "Including genetic profiles similar to my father's. It's not in the published research." Eliza hesitated before taking it. "How did you get this?" "Zhang kept backups. When they seized his lab, they didn't get everything." Caroline met Eliza's eyes steadily. "I'm trusting you with this. It's technically evidence in an ongoing federal case." Eliza pocketed the drive, acknowledging the weight of that trust. "I'll review it tonight." Outside, they parted ways under gently falling snow. Eliza watched Caroline walk toward the subway entrance, a solitary figure leaving fresh footprints in the pristine white covering. She wondered what footprints they would leave in medical history, groundbreaking pioneers or cautionary tales. Her phone buzzed with a text from the hospital. Senator Hayes had been admitted with severe abdominal pain. His condition was deteriorating faster than expected. Time was running out. The Boston Federal Courthouse stood imposing against the clear blue April sky, its modernist glass facade reflecting clouds and sunlight in equal measure. Inside courtroom 3B, Eliza shifted uncomfortably on the hard wooden bench, surrounded by journalists, medical professionals, and curious onlookers. At the front of the courtroom, Judge Eleanor Harmon reviewed documents with practiced efficiency. Beside her, Dr. Li Jiang sat with his attorney, his posture relaxed despite the ankle monitor visible beneath his pant leg. After 3 months of legal maneuvering, emergency hearings, and unprecedented cooperation between the Justice Department, the FDA, and Boston General Hospital, they had arrived at this critical juncture. "This court is asked to approve an extraordinary measure," Judge Harmon began, her voice carrying through the packed room. "The supervised release of Dr. Li Jiang to conduct an experimental medical treatment under the FDA's Expanded Access Program." Eliza glanced at Caroline, who sat in the front row beside Senator Hayes. The senator had lost another 20 pounds since their first meeting. His once commanding presence was diminished, his breathing labored even at rest. The standard treatments had failed spectacularly, accelerating his decline. "The court recognizes Dr. Eliza Mercer," the judge continued. Eliza rose and approached the stand. After being sworn in, she faced the courtroom with the calm professionalism that had carried her through countless medical crises. "Dr. Mercer, you are Senator Hayes's primary oncologist, correct?" "Yes, Your Honor." "And you support this unorthodox request for Dr. Zhang's supervised release to administer his experimental treatment?" Eliza took a measured breath. "I do, Your Honor. Senator Hayes's cancer has proven resistant to all standard treatments. His condition is rapidly deteriorating. Based on my review of Dr. Zhang's research and prior case studies, I believe this treatment represents the senator's best chance for survival." The FDA attorney rose from his seat. "Your Honor, if I may cross-examine?" Judge Harmon nodded, and the attorney approached, his expression skeptical. "Dr. Mercer, you're aware that Dr. Zhang's research was deemed unsafe by an FDA review panel, that his methods violated numerous protocols." "I'm aware of the FDA's position. Eliza answered carefully. I'm also aware that of the 16 patients Dr. Zhang treated before his arrest, 11 showed significant tumor reduction and 7 achieved complete remission. Results that have never been independently verified, the attorney countered. Which is why we've proposed a fully monitored protocol with oversight from Boston General's Ethics Committee, the FDA's Compassionate Use Program, and independent observers from Johns Hopkins and Mayo Clinic, Eliza responded. Every aspect of this treatment will be documented and transparent. The questioning continued for nearly an hour, probing Eliza's medical judgment, her relationship with Caroline Hayes, and her understanding of the risks involved. Throughout, she maintained her position. This wasn't about bending rules for a powerful senator, but about giving a dying man his best chance while advancing medical knowledge. As she returned to her seat, Dr. Zhang was called to testify. He spoke with quiet confidence about his treatment protocol, the modifications Caroline had suggested, and the specific approach tailored to Senator Hayes' genetic profile. The senator's cancer has a unique mutation pattern, Zhang explained. My treatment is designed to recognize and target these specific markers, reprogramming his immune system to attack only the cancerous cells. And the risks? Judge Harmon asked. Significant, Zhang acknowledged. Cytokine storm, organ failure, accelerated tumor growth. But these risks exist with experimental treatments generally, and we've implemented safeguards based on our previous cases. The FDA attorney pounced. Previous cases conducted illegally without proper oversight. Zhang remained unruffled. Previous cases conducted with terminal patients who had exhausted all approved options, just like Senator Hayes. The testimony continued through the afternoon. Expert witnesses from both sides presented conflicting views on the treatment's potential efficacy and dangers. The legal arguments blended with medical terminology until the boundaries between law and science blurred. During a brief recess, Eliza found herself standing next to Dr. Zhang near the water fountain. "Thank you," he said simply, "for having the courage to support this." "I'm not doing it for you," she replied. "I'm doing it for my patient." Zhang nodded. "As you should be. But still, it would have been easier to follow protocol, to let him die properly." Before Eliza could respond, Caroline approached, her expression tense. "The judge is ready to rule," she said. They returned to the courtroom, where Judge Harmon sat reviewing her notes one final time. The room fell silent as she looked up. "This court is faced with an unprecedented situation," she began. "The intersection of criminal justice, medical ethics, and a human life hanging in the balance. After careful consideration of the testimony and evidence presented, I am granting the motion for Dr. Zhang's supervised release for the sole purpose of administering this experimental treatment to Senator Hayes." A murmur ran through the courtroom. Caroline gripped her father's hand tightly. "However," the judge continued, "this approval comes with strict conditions. Dr. Zhang will remain under house arrest at a secure medical facility. The treatment will be administered according to the protocol submitted to this court, with constant supervision by the appointed medical team. Any deviation will result in immediate termination of the program and Dr. Zhang's return to federal custody." She fixed Zhang with a stern gaze. "Dr. Zhang, do you understand and accept these conditions?" "I do, Your Honor," he replied solemnly. "Then this court is adjourned. Treatment may commence in 48 hours, once the secure facility is prepared." And as the courtroom began to empty, reporters rushed forward, shouting questions. Eliza slipped through a side door, seeking a moment of quiet to process what had just happened. She found herself in a small consultation room, empty except for Senator Hayes, who sat alone by the window. "Senator," she acknowledged, preparing to leave him in peace. "Dr. Mercer," he called, gesturing to the chair across from him. "Please join me." She hesitated before sitting. Up close, the senator looked worse than he had in court. His skin had a grayish tinge, and his breathing was shallow. "You should be resting," she said gently. The next 48 hours are critical for building your strength before treatment. He waved away her concern. I wanted to thank you. Caroline told me how you fought for this, how you risked your reputation. I'm just doing my job, she replied, exploring all options for my patient. Hayes smiled weakly. We both know that's not true. Most doctors in your position would have stuck to the established protocols, managed my pain, and helped me die with dignity. Eliza couldn't deny it. Your daughter is very persuasive. She gets that from her mother, he said, a distant look in his eyes. Caroline was right about one thing. I've put too much faith in systems. Sometimes the rules need to be challenged. Even by a US senator who helped write many of those rules. Hayes chuckled, which turned into a painful cough. When he recovered, he said, especially by those who write the rules, we should understand better than anyone when they fail. They sat in companionable silence for a moment, the weight of what lay ahead settling between them. Are you afraid? Eliza asked finally. Of dying? No. Hayes looked out the window at the Boston skyline. Of leaving Caroline alone? Terrified? Of being remembered as the senator who bent the rules for his own benefit? Somewhat. If this works, Eliza pointed out, you'll be remembered as the catalyst for a medical breakthrough. And if it fails, she met his gaze directly. Then you'll be remembered as someone brave enough to try, to contribute to medical knowledge even in your final days. Hayes nodded, seeming satisfied with this answer. My daughter believes in miracles, Dr. Mercer. Do you? Eliza considered the question carefully. Throughout her career, she had witnessed recoveries that defied medical explanation, patients who survived against all odds. Were these miracles, or simply the outer edges of what science could currently explain? I believe in possibility, she answered finally, in the human body's remarkable capacity for healing, given the right tools. And I believe your daughter's determination has created a possibility where none existed before. Hayes smiled, a genuine smile that briefly transformed his haggard face. That's good enough for me. The secure medical suite occupied the entire east wing of Boston General's research building. For 6 weeks, it had been Senator Hayes's home, Dr. Zhang's laboratory, and the focal point of international medical attention. Journalists camped outside the hospital grounds, medical researchers flew in from around the world, and the FDA maintained a constant presence, monitoring every aspect of the experimental treatment. Inside the suite, Eliza studied the latest scans with a mixture of disbelief and cautious excitement. Beside her, Dr. Zhang pointed to areas where the tumors had visibly shrunk. 30% reduction overall, he noted. The primary mass in the pancreas has decreased by nearly half. Eliza nodded, still wary of celebrating too soon. The inflammatory markers are down, liver function is improving, but his immune response is still concerning. The third treatment should address that, Zhang assured her. We're adjusting the cellular programming to reduce cytokine production while maintaining tumor targeting. Their working relationship had evolved over the weeks, from mutual suspicion to grudging respect to genuine collaboration. Zhang's brilliance was undeniable. His understanding of cellular mechanics intuitive in a way Eliza had rarely encountered. Together, they had refined the treatment protocol, responding to Senator Hayes's specific reactions and incorporating new insights gained through constant monitoring. Caroline entered, carrying 3 cups of coffee. Dark circles underlined her eyes, evidence of the sleepless nights spent analyzing data and adjusting calculations. Still, there was a lightness to her movements that hadn't been there before. How's my father today? She asked, handing them each a cup. Resting comfortably, Eliza replied. His pain levels are significantly reduced and he managed to eat a full breakfast. Caroline's smile was cautious but genuine. The miracle is happening, isn't it? It's too soon to call it a miracle, Eliza cautioned. But the results are promising. Your father's response exceeds our best projections. The real test comes after the final treatment, Zhang added, if the tumor reduction continues without the cells reactivating. They sipped their coffee in thoughtful silence, the weight of cautious hope hanging between them. Outside the window, summer had arrived in Boston, bringing lush greenery to the hospital grounds and warm breezes that carried the scent of the nearby Charles River. The ethics committee meets tomorrow, Eliza said finally. They'll review our data and determine whether to approve expanding the trial to other patients. Senator Morton has already pushed through additional funding, Caroline noted. If approved, we could begin treating 5 more patients by the end of the month. Zhang set down his cup. I've prepared the presentation for the committee. With your permission, Dr. Mercer, I'd like you to present it with me. Your credibility with the hospital board will be crucial. Eliza nodded her agreement. 6 weeks ago, she had been a respected oncologist following established protocols. Now she stood at the forefront of a potential breakthrough, her name forever linked with an experimental treatment that defied conventional wisdom. The door opened and a nurse appeared. Dr. Mercer, Senator Hayes is asking for you. In the senator's private room, sunlight streamed through the windows, illuminating a man transformed. While still thin, Hayes had regained some of his color. The pain that had etched deep lines into his face had receded, allowing glimpses of the commanding presence he once projected. Senator, Eliza greeted him, checking his vitals on the monitoring equipment. Your numbers look good today. I feel good, he confirmed, sitting up straighter in bed. Strong enough for a conversation I've been putting off. Eliza raised an eyebrow. Should I get Caroline? No, this is for you alone, he gestured to the chair beside his bed. The Justice Department called this morning. They're preparing for Dr. Zhang's return to custody next week. Eliza felt a chill despite the warm room. But we're not finished. The protocol calls for monitoring and possible adjustments for at least another month. The court order was very specific. Supervised release for 6 weeks to administer the treatment. That period ends next Friday. We need to file for an extension, Eliza insisted. Your response has been remarkable, but without proper follow-up. That's why I wanted to speak with you, Hayes interrupted. I'm introducing legislation next week, comprehensive reform of the FDA's approval process for treatments targeting terminal conditions, expanded access, accelerated review, protection for researchers pursuing unconventional approaches. Eliza's eyes widened. That's ambitious. It's necessary, Hayes countered. What happened to me shouldn't require a senator's influence and a federal court order. Any patient facing death deserves access to promising treatments, regardless of their connections. The medical establishment will fight it, Eliza warned. Pharmaceutical companies, research institutions, regulatory bodies, they all have vested interests in maintaining the current system. Hayes smiled, a glimpse of the political strategist he'd been for decades. I'm counting on it. Their opposition will generate media attention, public debate, and I have something they don't, a compelling personal story and a treatment that works. You're going public with your case? Tomorrow. A press conference from this room broadcast nationally. My recovery isn't complete, but it's dramatic enough to make people question why these treatments aren't more widely available. Eliza considered the implications. What about Dr. Zhang? A full pardon is being prepared, Hayes revealed, contingent upon his agreement to conduct proper clinical trials under FDA supervision. No more underground research, no more unsanctioned treatments. And you think he'll agree? He already has. We spoke this morning. Eliza leaned back, processing this information. You've been busy for someone supposedly focusing on recovery. Hayes chuckled. Caroline gets her determination from somewhere. A knock at the door interrupted them. Caroline entered, followed by Dr. Zhang and 2 members of the ethics committee. Their expressions were solemn. What's happened? Eliza asked, immediately alert. Dr. Bradford, the ethics committee chair, stepped forward. We've received an urgent request from Mayo Clinic. They have a 12-year-old patient with pancreatic cancer, an extremely rare case with genetic markers similar to Senator Hayes's. Terminal prognosis, the other committee member added, perhaps weeks remaining. Zhang's eyes met Eliza's across the room. The treatment protocol would need significant modification for a pediatric patient. Can it be done? Caroline asked. Theoretically, yes, but the risks are substantial, and we have no pediatric data to work from. All eyes turned to Senator Hayes, who had been listening intently. This is exactly why the system needs to change, he said quietly. A child shouldn't have to wait for legislation or court orders. Dr. Bradford cleared his throat. Given the extraordinary circumstances, the committee is prepared to approve an emergency extension of the current protocol to include this patient, pending parental consent and proper monitoring, which means keeping Dr. Zhang out of custody, Eliza realized. The Justice Department has already been contacted, Hayes confirmed. They've agreed to a temporary extension of the supervised release. Caroline moved to her father's side, taking his hand. You arranged this, didn't you? I made some calls, he admitted, but the decision was the committee's. Zhang stepped forward. I'll need to review the child's complete genetic profile immediately. Dr. Mercer, can you assist with the pediatric adaptations? Eliza nodded, already mentally calculating the necessary adjustments. We should begin preparations tonight. I'll contact Mayo Clinic for the transfer arrangements. As the room erupted into purposeful activity, Senator Hayes watched with quiet satisfaction. Catching Eliza's eye, he gave her a small nod of acknowledgement, from one boundary pusher to another. 3 days later, Eliza stood in the observation room as the modified treatment was administered to Emma Lawson, the 12-year-old patient from Minnesota. Through the glass, she could see the girl's parents watching anxiously as Dr. Zhang supervised the infusion. Caroline stood beside them, explaining each step of the process, offering the same hope she had fought so hard to secure for her own father. Senator Hayes had been discharged that morning, not fully recovered, but well enough to continue treatment as an outpatient. His press conference had generated exactly the media storm he'd anticipated, with medical experts, ethicists, and patient advocates flooding the airwaves with commentary. The legislation he'd promised was already being drafted, with bipartisan support building among his colleagues. As for Dr. Zhang, the terms of his supervised release had been extended indefinitely, allowing him to establish a proper research program at Boston General under strict FDA oversight. The pardon remained in process, but its eventual approval seemed increasingly certain as the senator's recovery continued to exceed expectations. Eliza felt a presence beside her and turned to find Dr. Bradford watching the procedure. You were right, he admitted. Sometimes the protocols need to be challenged. Not abandoned, Eliza clarified. Evolved. What we're doing here isn't rejecting scientific rigor. It's applying it differently, recognizing that terminal patients have different risk calculations. Bradford nodded thoughtfully. The hospital board is establishing a permanent expanded access program based on this model. They'd like you to head it. The offer surprised her. Me? I thought I'd be lucky to keep my position after all this controversy. Controversy drives progress, Dr. Mercer, and in medicine, progress is measured in lives saved. He gestured toward Emma. Like hers, hopefully. Through the glass, Eliza watched as the last of the modified cells entered Emma's system. The girl gave a thumbs up to her parents, her bald head and thin frame a stark reminder of what was at stake. Caroline caught Eliza's eye and smiled, the determined smile of someone who had challenged the impossible and won. 6 months earlier, everyone had laughed when Caroline declared, "Let my father free and I will cure you." Now, no one was laughing. Instead, they were watching, learning, and beginning to believe in possibilities they had previously dismissed. Not a miracle, Eliza thought, but something perhaps more valuable. Science pushed forward by human determination, compassion, and the unwillingness to accept that nothing more could be done. As she prepared to join the team in Emma's room, Eliza reflected that sometimes the most important medical breakthrough wasn't a new drug or device, but the courage to challenge accepted limitations, to believe that today's impossibility could become tomorrow's standard of care. That was a legacy worth risking everything for. Thank you for reading Let My Father Free and I Will Cure You. If you enjoyed this story, please like this video and subscribe to the channel for more immersive storytelling content like this. I'd love to know, what part of the world are you watching from? Let me know in the comments below.